Sacred Heart. Here's what happened. And, okay, look, a lot of things have been said about a lot of people in rock and roll over the years. We know that Tony Iommi wasn't a very nice person to his singers, and we know Ritchie Blackmore wasn't probably nice to any member in his band at all. But at some point, there may have been a time where Ronnie wasn't exactly. The band's name is Dio. So, put two and two together, and I'm pretty sure that Ronnie was calling the shots in the band. It was a band, but it was called Dio, and Ronnie's Dio. So there might have been some issues rubbing the band members here and there, and we don't know. I don't know for sure, but I do know that when I saw the first leg of the Sacred Heart tour, let's talk about Sacred Heart real quick. It comes out of the gates with this live-sounding song. It's called King of Rock and Roll, and it's phenomenal, man. Now, supposedly, and according, this was from Ronnie. This song was written about Ozzy, the King of Rock and Roll, and he says, "Brad Boy, everybody knows it, but everybody doesn't care." And it says, I know Ozzy didn't. Dude, I've read, even in Ozzy's like Prince of Darkness thing, he talks shit about Ronnie, like he's all, "I'm not Ronnie fucking Dio," and you're just like, God, dude, like what? I mean, Ozzy should have been, a little, intimidated by Ronnie, because one, Ronnie's like a foot shorter than him, and Ronnie blows him away. First of all, Ronnie was a singer. Second of all, Ronnie could write lyrics. Third of all, Ronnie was Ronnie. He was amazing. He created this. Ronnie James Dio came up with the devil horns for metal. He stole it from his grandma, but still, it was awesome. This was like from his like grandma, because she would do this. They would fork this at you if they thought you had the evil eye, or you were putting the hoodoo voodoo on them. They would go. It's the Maloik. Anyways, but Ronnie incorporated now. This is like the secret devil sign of all time for metal. This means if you do this, it means you're like in the club, dude. So. And Ozzy would do the peace signs, he'd be like, peace, rock and roll, but well, anyways. Apparently, Ronnie liked Ozzy, and, okay, that's cool, but, Ozzy didn't like you that much, because I think he just felt intimidated, because Ronnie was the full package. He was the real frontman lead singer, and Ozzy was Ozzy. Don't get me wrong, I love Ozzy. I mean, tell me I don't love Ozzy. I can't fucking Ozzy, Dio on my leg, both of them, love them, both. But anyways, King of Rock and Roll, though, it was supposed to be about Ozzy, according to Ronnie, and so, okay, cool. But a blazing song, great song, and then Sacred Heart came out, and Ronnie did the Dungeons and Dragons and Rainbows and Darkness and Magic and Light and it's cool. I mean, Sacred Heart, it's a cool song. And then you got Another Lie. Another Lie. And then you started to see there was a little bit of darkness in there. Usually Ronnie was like, he was darkness and light, but usually like it was more sorcery and that kind of stuff. Whereas this, he started to get into the real situations, and Another Lie, that's a great song. Another Lie. And then you had Rock and Roll Children, which if you listen to the words, I don't understand it at all. I know what it's about. I mean, it's about rock and roll children. We were rock and roll children. We were the kids that wore jean jackets with big patches on the back that said Iron Maiden on them, and we were the kids at school that got picked on because we had long hair, and we were like the outcasts. So I understood what rock and roll children was all about. I mean, because we were guys. In the 80s, even when metal became popular, and then like glam metal and hair metal kind of came out and it started becoming more and more popular, we were still the outcast kids. Dude, I remember I used to have kids coming up and tell me, hey, go take a bath, you dirthead. And you'd be like, dude, I bathe like every day. Like, okay, thank you. Yeah! Go talk to that stinky kid over there. You know, but we were the dregs of society. And metal still, to this day, has that dirty kind of, you know, reputation to it. Oh, listen to metal. You know, whatever. It's a legitimate form of music, people. All those people are dead anyway, so who cares? I mean, here they're all living a wonderful life. Hopefully they're homeless, though, so I can walk up to them now and say, Take a bath, dirtball! Can't remember who that guy was, but someday I'll find him. Anyways, Rock and Roll Children, man, it was a strange song, you know, it was like these two rock and roll kids, the guy and the girl, and they disappeared, and then they went into some other dimension or something the night that we slammed the door on Rock and Roll Children. Children of the Night! You know, or they became Children of the Night, and they turned into vampires or something. Not sure. That one was like a little mixed, like, what was Ronnie talking about? The lowest point on this album is Hungry for Heaven. Hungry for Heaven is like pop power metal. It's like, hungry for heaven, but you need a little hell. Oh, hungry. No, we're not hungry, Ronnie. Not for that song. It was on like the Vision Quest soundtrack, you know, and it was like, yeah, whatever. Just didn't really understand Hungry for Heaven. But then it had like the beat of a heart. Go beat your heart. And just another day. Fallen Angels, Come Gather Round, and then Shoot. And you know, like Ronnie at the end of the album on Shoot, he just, you know, there's like a shotgun blast on the end of the album. Like, he basically tells you if somebody threatens you with a gun, just tell them to shoot you. I don't know what was going through Ronnie's mind at that point, but it sounded angry. But like, dude, like the beat of the heart, like the beat of a heart. That's such a great song. So, dude, Sacred Heart was solid. It was a solid album. It had that fluff that was Hungry for Heaven, you know, because I'm sure the record company wanted you know, a single or, you know, to go on a soundtrack or whatever. But overall, though, it was a cool, and it was a great show. I remember going to see it. But here's the problem now. Apparently on the tour, at some point, Vivian Campbell walked into a flash pod and he got burned. And then he came to San Diego, you know, this was later on in the tour, and I remember, like, he was just standing up there, and, you know, at this point, Vivian had his hair tucked behind his ears, you know, so he had the big mullet going on, the big hair helmet mullet, and he looked like he did not want to be there at all. I remember seeing him at the sports arena, and we had great seats because, you know, we knew Vinny. You know, hey, Debbie, it's looking good in here. You know, Jefferson and Little Brother for Earth, Wind, and Fire. Yeah, our connection for tickets was Vinny. And so we always had really good seats. So we had great seats for it. I remember Accept opened up, and that was on the Midnight Mover tour, right? Let's look it up real quick. Metal Heart Tour. I'm sorry. Midnight Mover was a song on that album, but it was the Metal Heart Tour. And I remember their drummer was so loud, like every time he hit his bass drum, like my heart would skip a beat. I remember I was getting nauseous because they were so goddamn loud. But they put on a great show, you know. And then, like, the second time around with Craig Goldie, it was Rough Cut with Paul Shortino, you know, because I think Wendy Dio was the manager of that. But back to Sacred Heart. Vivian was dead on stage. He was just standing there, and I remember kind of looking over at my buddy George, you know, and I was like, dude, what's up with Vivian? And he was like, I don't know, I heard he got burned, you know, and I guess when he got burned, he just decided he didn't want to do that anymore or whatever. So he ended up leaving, and then he joined Whitesnake, and then of course now Vivian's in Def Leppard. So, and it's funny. Have you ever watched like Mojo? What is it, Mojo TV or something? It's on YouTube, and they do these little compilation lists. And I remember looking at one yesterday, and they were talking about the most controversial band changes of all time. And then they talked about like Ian Astbury going into the Doors, with Ray Manzarek and stuff, from the Cult. And then they talked about like Metallica, the revolving door. They said, which Cliff died. They even talked about Mustaine getting kicked out, and then they talked about Cliff, Jason Newsted, and then Robert Trujillo, and I was like, those were controversial. But they talked about Vivian Campbell replacing Steve Clark. First of all, Steve Clark is dead, so that wasn't really like he replaced him. I mean, how can you replace a dead guy? He's dead. They had to like get another guitar player. What were they supposed to do? Prop Steve up with a mannequin stand or something? But I remember I was watching it, and it said it was controversial getting Vivian Campbell in the band because the band's direction changed, and there was a lot of fans that were remembering the old way with Steve Clark. And I was thinking to myself, like, what? Steve Clark, the guitar player for the other guitar player in Def Leppard, he wasn't even the lead guitarist. He was like the rhythm guitar player in Def Leppard. Maybe I haven't been listening to my Def Leppard hard enough. Maybe I've missed all these years. I may have missed Steve Clark on the Guitar Gods last episode. I'm not being rude or defiling the dead, but dude, I saw Def Leppard with Steve Clark. Like, he just stood there. That guy was drunk out of his mind, dude. That guy was such a boozer. Didn't they say? I think I read a thing from Ozzy, and Ozzy was friends with him, and he had like 5 times the alcohol in his bloodstream that John Bonham had when they found him dead. So, whatever. Anyways, yeah, that was controversial. I digress, of course. Let's get back to Ronnie. Ronnie James Dio. Okay. Where were we? So, anyways, Vivian's in Def Leppard now. I know Vivian was battling cancer. I saw him on tour, last summer? And he was bald, and I looked it up, and Vivian had cancer. That sucks, but I guess he's doing really good, so hopefully he beats that. But anyways, Vivian, he wanted out. You could tell like he was not happy. I'm not sure what happened. I think maybe some egos kind of got in each other's way, because at that point, and it was kind of strange because they came out with Hearing Aid at that time too, and if everybody remembers. Hearing Aid, Ronnie James Dio, and it was really Vivian Campbell's idea. It was Vivian and Jimmy Bain. They went down to like KLOS in LA because they were doing like a little rock marathon to raise money for Africa, and Vivian and Jimmy noticed like there wasn't a lot of people like doing anything about it. So they went and took it back to Ronnie, and they decided, hey, let's do Hearing Aid. So Ronnie put out the feelers, and they ended up with a 7.5 minute song called Stars, or We're Stars, depending on who you talk to. And it was basically the heavy metal version of We Are the World. They had Jeff Tate and Rob Halford and Kevin DuBrow, Eric Bloom from Blue Oyster Cult. He was singing on that. And Paul Shortino from Rough Cut. Don Dokken. And, of course, Ronnie. Oh, and Dave Minichetti from Y&T. They were doing the vocal tracks, and then they had, like, a bunch of guitar players came in. I know, like, Neil Schon, Yngwie, Somebody let Brad Gillis into the studio for some reason. Not sure why. George Lynch, Donald Buck Dharma Rozier from Blue Oyster Cult played on there. I'm sure I'm missing somebody. Can't remember who, but anyways, so they did this little "We're Stars," they had a big chorus, and then the guys from like Wasp and stuff all being stupid, and Kevin Dubrow like led the little thing, and you could tell like Ronnie didn't like Kevin because he was Kevin Dubrow, so. But they put out this little thing, and it was kind of cool. They had the guys from Iron Maiden, Dave Murray and Adrian Smith. They did the backing track with Frankie Banali from Quiet Riot on the drums, and Vinny on the drums. They had two drummers, and then I think Vivian and Jimmy played along with them. So it was cool, it was a little, it had the guys from Spinal Tap there. That's where David Shane Hubbins comes in. He's like, I like the way he puts Yngwie J. Malmsteen to distinguish him from all the other Yngwie Malmsteens in the business. And then he's like, I've got pipes I haven't even. It's really a mercy to the engineer that I don't sing on this, Anyways, look it up, man, if you never heard that. It's pretty cool. I would sing it, but I can't hit the Paul Shortino parts or the Jeff Tate parts because those were back when they still had voices. Who cries for the children? I do. Sometime in the night when you're feeling the cold, take a look at the skies above you. Those are faces in the light. The story we're told. They're calling you, yeah. We are magic in the night. We are shadow, we are light. We are forever, you and I. All the parts, but you know what? I didn't really feel that Rob Halford. The Dave Meniketti, it was rocking. The Kevin Dubrow came out a little flat, but it was Kevin Dubrow. Who could tell? But definitely didn't feel my Rob Halford. I didn't really get a chance to do my Jeff Tate or my Paul Shortino. But Eric Bloom from Blue Oyster Cult. And then Vivian was gone. He was gone. So they got Craig Goldie, and Craig had played in Rough Cut, so they knew each other because I believe Rough Cut opened on their first tour when they played at the not the California Theater. They played at the Fox Theater here in San Diego in 1983 on the Holy Diver tour, and I'm pretty sure Rough Cut opened for them, if I recall correctly. What a great show! If you ever look up on YouTube, like the Holy Diver tour, it was just a stripped down stage, had that little cave painting, and Vinny was up on the top, and just whoa, Ronnie just came out and, and kicked our face in. Definitely check it out. Oh, anyways, they did Intermission, like I said, they did Time to Burn. And then they actually came out with another album, and it was called Dream Evil with Mr. Craig Goldie. And that was in 1987. I remember going to see the concert, and they had the big spider that was up, and it was shooting lasers and stuff. But Dream Evil was kind of a departure of the signature Vivian Campbell sound, obviously, because Vivian Campbell was no longer in the band. Not my favorite Dio album, but it still has some great songs on it. There was songs that were not, there wasn't a lot of Rainbow and Magic and, Sign of the Southern Cross going on there. You had When a Woman Cries and Naked in the Rain. you had the 7 minute All the Fools Sailed Away, which was okay. It wanted to be Sign of the Southern Cross, but it was not. And all the fools sailed away, leaving nothing more to say. Yeah, it was long. Night People, that's a cool song. Dream Evil, Sunset Superman. Sunset Superman. Sunset Superman. Not really my favorite Dio album. And then, I'll be honest, like, towards the end of the 80s, I started to kind of lose a little bit of touch with a lot of bands. I lost touch with Judas Priest. I lost touch with Rush. I lost touch with Dio. Just because, like, I was, we were all fascinated with Metallica and what they were doing in the early 90s. And, of course, grunge came out. I wasn't a huge fan of grunge. Pearl Jam and all those bands came out. So towards the end of the 80s, Dio started to kind of fall away from me. I still bought the albums. I remember buying, Lock Up the Wolves from 1990. And he went out and he found Rowan Robertson, who was like, 10 years old, I think. And he had Jens Johansson on that album from Yngwie, the keyboard player for Yngwie. He played on that album too. And then he lost Vinny Appice too, because I think Simon Wright played on that album. Ronnie just started doing kind of what Ritchie Blackmore did, and once Vivian left, it was a tight band. It was the same guys, and then all of a sudden Vivian left, and then after that, man, it started just being like a revolving door of players. Jimmy Bain was gone, and they had some kid that looked like he was like 12. I can't remember who the bass player was, but wasn't it at some point like Jeff Pilson was in his band from Dokken? But and then once Ronnie started doing that, the music really suffered, because Ronnie could write the music, and that's great. But the thing is that you could hear that the Holy Diver album and even the Last in Line album was a group effort. It says written by Ronnie James Dio and stuff, but you knew that those guys were putting in their stuff. And then once you start pushing out all the members of the band, you don't have like a cohesion. You have Ronnie's voice, which is still terrific, but then you got like just this revolving door. And every band like that does that, and they suffer for it. So Lock Up the Wolves, Evil on Queen Street, I think is probably the coolest song on there, and maybe Between Two Hearts. Wild One's cool, it's okay. Why Were They Watching Me? My Eyes, Twisted. There was a lot of filler on that album. It just wasn't. It just didn't feel right. And even the cover, it looked like some little kid drew it. It had those wolves, but they looked really crappy. And then it had like, wasn't that like the evil king from like the Black Cauldron? He has big like reindeer antlers. I don't know. It was kind of disappointing. So I wasn't really into that album. And then after that, Dio for me kind of fell off the face of the planet for a while, because I had other things going on. I had kids of my own and stuff like that, and I wasn't really out looking for rock albums to buy and stuff. I was listening to all the old stuff constantly, but I wasn't really listening to that stuff. And then 1992, Ronnie James Dio and Vinny Appice went back and rejoined Black Sabbath for one album called Dehumanizer. And there was a song on Dehumanizer that was in Wayne's World. It's called Time Machine. So, I don't know. Dio wasn't really doing anything. By 92 was kind of like, I don't know what was really going on in there. He's done his little revolving door of different musicians in his band and stuff, and it was kind of wearing thin. So they got back, and I guess they buried the hatchet with Geezer and Tony, and they put out Dehumanizer. And Dehumanizer, at the time, I didn't really appreciate it. I appreciate it a little bit more now because there are some good songs on there. Um, there's actually some great songs on there. It's just that it was kind of weird because you had the cover and it had this like animated picture of like a robotic Grim Reaper like killing this metal fan. He had the big scythe and he had like bolts of lightning coming out of his hand and he was killing some like long-haired rocker dude with a with a Dawkins t-shirt on. Dawkins shirt. But they had Computer God, which was a cool song. After All the Dead, that's a great song. TV Crimes. TV Crimes. Another TV Crimes. Holy Spirit, Holy Ghost, he's the one who pays the most. Ronnie's voice was a little rough on this album, but it was cool. They'd have this like I, and Buried Alive, Time Machine, you're living in a time machine. This was kind of a precursor to what Heaven and Hell was going to eventually be. Not really sure what happened. I don't even know. Did they go out on tour with this album? I'm not sure. I can look it up, but you know, it was Black Sabbath, man, with Ronnie James Dio, and it was interesting. It was kind of a interesting point. And then I think that's when the wheels fell off for Ronnie. After that, for a while, and he came out with Black Sabbath, Vinny Appice, and Ronnie came back into Dio, and they hired Dokken bassist Jeff Pilson. Watch the Break in the Chains video where he's wearing the white leather outfit. Anyways, and Tracy G. Not my favorite Dio album. Strange Highways. It just uh, Tracy G. He just tried to be all flashy and bendy and just trying to he's trying to show off and it just came off annoying. Um, Jesus, Mary, and the Holy Ghost probably the only song on that album that I could truly say that I like. Um, it had some cool songs, but you could tell like evil. Did you see that? It just slipped in there. It said evil. Whoa. um, Evolution. You could tell that Ronnie, and I heard, I can't verify anything. I'm not a historian. If you want to find out the facts, go look them up or talk to people that knew the real Ronnie James Dio. But I heard there were some issues and there might have been some demons that he was trying to exorcise. And you could tell in this music that there was a darkness. Dio wasn't exactly, at this point, like headlining arenas. Some of his popularity had fallen off. You hear songs like One Foot in the Grave and Give Her the Gun and Blood from a Stone. Hollywood Black's a cool song. Strange Highways, I mean, it was an okay song, but this album just sounded. It didn't have that Dio kind of sound. It sounded kind of filthy, kind of very angry, and it sounded like a Dio album. It didn't. I mean, half the time, like Tracy G was, it sounded like he was playing out a tune, and then he would just play this, this weird riff chord change that sounded like a billy goat thrown up into a garbage can that's been doused with kerosene and lit on fire with napalm. I'm just saying. And then, like, um, he was asked to play rhythm guitar when Craig Goldie came back in the band. He played with Dio for 6 years, and then they said, "Hey, Craig Goldie's coming back, and he's gonna play lead guitar. Do you want to go ahead and stand over in the corner and play rhythm guitar?" I mean, obviously that's what high regard Ronnie had for Tracy G. Just saying. Um, 96 they came out with Angry Machine, um, And Angry Machines, it kind of followed into the same vein as Strange Highways. It was very, what's the word I'm looking for? It was angry. He still had Tracy G on guitars, and Jeff Pilson. He had Scott Warren on keyboards. So it was pretty much the same band. Little bit more tolerant of Tracy G on this album because there is some songs that were pretty decent. The Japanese bonus track, God Hates Heavy Metal, that song is awesome. Um, I would sing it, but I don't want to. You had songs like Institutional Man and Don't Tell the Kids. Stay Out of My Mind. Hunter of the Heart. Dying in America. It was a darkness, There was definitely a darkness in the Dio camp at this point. And then in 2000, Ronnie comes out with his 8th studio album, Dio, and it was a concept album. It was recorded, I think, in like late '99. Came out in March of 2000, and it was called Magicka. Magicka! It had Craig Goldie. Jimmy Bain was back in the band. Simon Wright was on drums. And Ronnie was singing vocals. And it was pretty cool because it was about magic, and that's what Ronnie James Dio was supposed to be singing to us. Not, hey, I'm a boozer and I want to kill people and the world sucks. It wasn't like that. It was more like, they had some pretty cool songs on Magicka. And, Goldie was a big Blackmore freak, so it sounded kind of Blackmore-y, but he had Lord of the Last Day, Fever Dreams, Feed My Head.
Feed My Head.
Chalice. That was a cool song.
I am a rock and you a glass, never broken,
never last. And if you get in my way,
I'll knock you down.
Yeah, Ronnie was angry. He was still angry. And even on Magicka, dude, he was angry. But, Magicka was cool, man. It was like Ronnie starting to build power back up from his old swords and sorcery kind of days. So it sounds a little rainbowy, but Losing My Insanity, it was a cool song, and it had it was a flowing album. It wasn't epic, but it was cool to hear Dio come back to his roots and kind of shuck off a little bit of the darkness. And then in 2002, and I went and saw these guys because they opened for, who was it? The Scorpions and Deep Purple. It was Dio, the Scorpions, and Deep Purple in 2002. And it was on the Killing the Dragon tour. And this album, to me, Craig Goldie wrote some of the songs on here, but Doug Aldrich played on the album. And Doug Aldrich, if you've ever seen him live, he's a great guitar player. And so it was Ronnie and Jimmy Bain. Simon Wright was still on drums. You had Scott Warren on keyboard still, and then Ronnie. But Killing the Dragon was like Dio revived. And I remember seeing them, and they were the opening band, and I remember we were at the Coors Amphitheater, and we were like in the second row, and Ronnie was doing his set, and he was super pissed off at the world. Like, we were like, whoa. I remember he was talking shit. I guess he had a problem with opening for Deep Purple. He was making some comments up there. We were all just kind of standing there going, whoa. And he, and it was very un-Ronnie-like, because it just seemed like he was very upset. But, but yeah, Killing the Dragon, Along Comes a Spider, Push. I love that song. Push. Scream. Throwaway Children, which was like what Rock and Roll Children should have been, but it was a little better. And then I remember in the song "Push," it had a video, and it had like Tenacious D in it. Because remember, Tenacious D sang the song, the Dio song.
Dio has rocked for a long, long time.
But now it's time for you to pass the torch. He has songs of wildebeest in danger. He has soared on the wings of a demon. But now, and then he was like, "You're too old. No more rocking for you. We're going to take you to a home. But we will sing a song about you. Dio, time to go. You
Must give your cape and scepter to me, and a smaller one for KG.
Anyways, 2002's Killing the Dragon was definitely a step back in the right direction. It was cleansing, and I actually bought that album when it came out because I was excited. I was got a chance to get back into Dio and be like, oh my god, cool. So definitely Killing the Dragon. And then in 2004, he came out with Master of the Moon. And he had Craig Goldie back in the band, and then Jeff Pilson came back in the band. Still had Simon Wright on the drums, but Jeff Pilson. I'm telling you, man, watch the Break in the Chains video where George Lynch and Jeff Pilson are like, they're walking Don Dokken down the corridor, and and they both had the mullet hair with the, it's disturbing. But yeah, Jeff Pilson. So Master of the Moon had this big demon on the cover, and he was holding like the moon, but it looked like a big crystal ball, and he was just like, you were like, yeah, dude, if I could go and I see a Dio album with a big demon on the cover holding a freaking moon like a crystal ball, I'm excited. So I had One More for the Road, Shivers, The Man Who Would Be King, dude, The End of the World, Death by Love. The Japanese edition bonus track was The Prisoner of Paradise. It was just a great album, man. It was a straight ahead rockin' album. It was, nothing that was gonna blow your mind, but it was Dio, and Dio was coming back, and you could tell that it was just like, it was totally cool, man. It was great to have Dio and have a Dio album cover, that just like made you wanna listen to the album. So it was just super cool. And then like 2007 came around, and I know Black Sabbath came out the Dio years, and they actually went on tour, and I got to go see them. I Megadeth opened, and it was on their United Abomination tour, so they did. And then of course Sabbath came out, and you got to watch. It was like seeing Zeppelin. For me, it was like seeing Zeppelin, dude. It was like seeing the Beatles or the Stones or the Who, or a band that defined a generation. Seeing Ronnie up there with Black Sabbath, with the guys in Sabbath, that was like, I was 12 years old the last time they were together. I mean, Dehumanizer, I didn't really catch that. But Mob Rules was in 1982. I was 10 years old when Heaven and Hell came out. So, my age kind of hindered me from seeing some of these stellar bands, but to be able to go and see them. And I remember Ronnie came out, and they went through the entire set list, and he sang every friggin' note like spot on, and they did everything. They did Children of the Sea and Voodoo and just everything. Neon Nights. They did a full set. It was stellar to see them do that stuff live. And of course, a couple years after Ronnie had passed, like about 2 or 3 years ago, I remember I stumbled upon Holy Diver Live, and I didn't even know it existed. And I remember I ordered the video and I watched it, and I was blown away. because he did Holy Diver in its entirety, and it came out in like 2006, like right before he went back on tour with Black Sabbath, and which wasn't Black Sabbath anymore. It was called Heaven and Hell because Sharon Osbourne decided that the only time they could use the Black Sabbath moniker is if Ozzy was singing in the band, as if we could like overlook the Dio years where the Black Sabbath moniker was still in place. Like, whatever. Sharon, call whatever you want, and it's ridiculous. The little bullshit things that people do. Like, Sharon Osbourne should be punched in the face for that. Like, who gives a shit? We know. Heaven and Hell says Black Sabbath on it. It doesn't say Heaven and Hell by Heaven and Hell. And an idiot. Ugh. Sorry, Sharon, but 3/4 of the band were still alive. And in the band when Ronnie was in it too. So, move on. Now you win. Ronnie's dead. So, congratulations. Fucking bitch. Jesus Christ. Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm ranting because shit like that just pisses me off. It's like when Sharon got the beautiful idea to like, hey, you know what? Let's put Robert Trujillo and that fucking drummer with the dreadlocks on Blizzard of Oz and Diver Madman. We'll take Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake off because we're too fucking cheap to pay them their royalties that they're actually owed. Shit like that. Sharon Osbourne's what's wrong with the music industry. She comes from a thug family. Her thug father used to be a manager. He used to run the shit like he was in the mafia, and she's the same way. She's a...
Half my life's in books, written pages, lived and read.
Anyways, back to Ronnie James Dio. Oh, God. If you want to look up some really cool Ronnie James Dio stuff, I'll go over at the end. I'll go over some tidbits that you really should definitely look forward to. But one of the last albums I want to talk about is the Heaven and Hell album that Ronnie did right before he passed away. And I wasn't expecting a lot. I remember it came out and he was sick, and everybody was like, "Oh, he's sick, but he's probably going to go on tour." They're gonna try and go on tour because it came out in 2009. It was called The Devil You Know, and it was by Heaven and Hell, which we all know is Black Sabbath with Ronnie James Dio. I remember listening to that album and then, waiting like, oh man, I hope they come around because this was a good album, and then Ronnie, got sick and he had the cancer and everything was going good, and then we received the news, and I'll tell you, like, very few people in the music industry affected my life as much as Ronnie James Dio did. I've been a Dio fan since I was a little kid, since I was 13 years old. It's like Buddy Holly. It's like listening to The Day the Music Died. Just Ronnie's passing. It was such a shock. And I remember, watching that metal show where they were saying, hey, Ronnie's doing good, and I remember looking things up on the internet and seeing how Ronnie was doing, and he would come out with these videos saying how, he's doing good, and the cancer's getting smaller and that kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden, Wendy put out that email out on the internet saying that her heart was broken, that Ronnie passed away on May 16th, 2010. So, but to hear Heaven and Hell do The Devil You Know, they had Adam and Evil and Bible Black and Rock and Roll Angel. That album was like crushing, man. Like you could tell, like the Sabbath guys, like man, like for the first time in like a long time, they were with Ronnie, and they were getting along, and they were just coming up with this You know, these guys are the godfathers of heavy metal music. You know, the Black Sabbath guys, but Ronnie's in there too. If you don't think Ronnie James Dio is one of the godfathers of heavy metal music, then you forgot where you came from, man. Rainbow and Black Sabbath and Dio and even Elf, had its uh, little niche there in music history, but like you could hear the power on this album, and it was such a shame not only that Ronnie passed away, but the fact that we didn't get to see him on this tour and get to see the guys play and be proud of this music that they had come out with. So definitely a great album to listen to. Very heavy, very but Ronnie's voice was still strong, and the lyrics were biting, and it was definitely a great thing to listen to. So let's go over a little couple of little tidbits that I want to share with you as far as Ronnie. Some of the things to look for. I don't know if you've ever heard of or whatever, but a couple years ago, one of my friends was like, "Hey, dude, have you ever heard that Roger Glover album?" And I was like, "What Roger Glover album?" And he was like, "Dude, you gotta listen to it. It's got like Ronnie Dio and stuff on it. And it's called It's called The Butterfly Ball and the Grasshopper's Feast. And it came out in 1974. Give that a listen. It's got some Ronnie on there. It's got a bunch of different singers and stuff on there. There's Roger Glover from Deep Purple, bass player from Deep Purple. Definitely check that out. And then the other one you want to kind of look up, and it's hard to find. I know I have it because I'm a fan. But there was an album by the drummer for Loudness, and his name was Minetaka Higuchi. And the album is called Free World, and it's called Minetaka Higuchi with Dream Castle, and it came out in 1997. And there's a song that Dio does on there called What Cost War. It's just cool to listen to because, one, Minetaka was a great drummer, and of course, Minetaka's no longer with us either. Minetaka passed away. Can't remember the date, but I'll put it right here, because I always do. But definitely some people forget that he was a great drummer and Ronnie was a great singer, and of course Ronnie was on that album. So definitely take a look at that album, because we always want to explore and find new things to listen to. If you've never heard Dream On with Yngwie and Ronnie, definitely listen to that. And the funny thing about that Dream On one is that when I was a kid, or not even when I was a kid, even when I was an adult, like when you listen to Dream On from Aerosmith, the way Steven Tyler sings, you're like, what is he saying? Like sometimes you couldn't really understand what he was saying. Well, when you listen to the Ronnie version, you can actually understand what he's saying. So the funny thing is I actually learned the words to Dream On because of Ronnie James Dio. But it was pretty cool because he did he did the I just ran across this Dio Rarities thing, and there's some cool stuff on here. What Cost War with Minetaka, To Live for the King with Kerry Livgren, Smoke on the Water with Deep Purple, that's pretty cool. And then Love Is All with Roger Glover, Mask of the Great Deceiver, Rainbow in the Dark, Dream On with Inger. Gates of Babylon with Inger. Hold on, I'm tripping on this because I never even heard this before. To be able to like go on your computer, because that's where all my songs are, and I have like 50,000 songs on my computer. But it's just amazing to come up and run into some things like We Wish You a Metal Christmas with Ronnie James Dio sings "God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen." Um, that's awesome. I haven't heard that in a long, long time. Um, wow. That's cool. But what else do we got? We got Kickapoo from Tenacious D. If in the Pick of Destiny, remember if you remember Jack Black is just a little kid, JB or Jables, and his dad is Meatloaf, and he comes out and he sings a song at the dinner table, and it's not very appropriate for the dinner table, and they're very Christian, and he ends up getting thrown in his room, and he starts singing to the poster on the wall of Dio, because that's the only poster his dad didn't rip down because it was on the back of the door, and Ronnie sings him a song. He's like, I hear you, brave young Jables, you are hungry for the rock. Oh, yeah. But anyways, definitely check that out because Jack Black and them, they're huge Dio fans. They always talk about Dio and stuff, and that's hot because who's Dio? The other thing that Dio did, he was on Queensryche. He was Dr. X on Operation Mindcrime 2. Yeah, that's cool to listen to, but it's not really their best work. So, but definitely listen to some of the older stuff. If you get a chance, definitely look into Ronnie and the Prophets and stuff like that. But overall, guys, I'll just let you know that it was truly a privilege and an honor to be able to meet Ronnie those couple of times that I met him, and to be able to kind of hang out with him and just I remember standing at the NAMM show with him and just talking to him for like an hour, and like I said, he was the coolest guy, man. He was phenomenal. It wasn't like he was a rock star. He was just a guy, and he was just chilling there. It was truly amazing thing to be able to have met him, and I will always hold his music in high regard. Always, Yeah. Oh yeah, and a couple of live shows. Let's talk about real quick because I talked about live shows in my second show. Let's talk about a couple of live shows that you could probably find from Ronnie. Of course, Holy Diver live, and then you got the intermission stuff, which was only a couple of songs. But you got at Donington, and it was 1983 and the 1987 show, and those are together, and you can buy those. That's if you want to hear. Dio from the Holy Diver tour, and then 87, which was what, Dream Evil? What was 87? Yeah, it was Dream Evil, so it was Craig. So the first part's with Vivian, the second part's with Craig. That's a great show. Evil or Divine, live in New York City. That was on the Killing the Dragon tour. That's pretty cool. I like the Holy Diver live because they do Holy Diver in its entirety, and then they do Terror Woman, Sign of the Southern Cross, One Night in the City, Gates of Babylon, forget about it, Heaven and Hell, Man on a Silver Mountain, Long Live Rock and Roll, and of course We Rock. And you get to hear Invisible and Gypsy live. That's pretty cool. I know they had Inferno from 1998. I think that was with Tracy G and Jeff Pilson on it. I know they did like Mistreated on there, and that's weird because you gotta ask yourself, why would you do Mistreated? That was like a Richie Blackmore song, but whatever. I have a live at the Hammersmith show from 1984, and it basically has the entire show from the Last in Line tour at the Hammersmith Odeon, and that's a good show because that starts out with the intro with a scream. Stand up and shout, One Night in the City, One Night in the City, yeah. Well, he did do One Night in the City. Huh. Well, it was 1984. Don't Talk to Strangers, Mystery, Egypt, The Chains Are Run, Holy Diver. You've been down too long in the midnight sea. Oh, what's becoming of me?
Ride the tiger.
She had 13 years of teenage tears, never a helping hand. She had 14 more of rain before she saw the side of land. She was a photograph just ripped in half, a smile inside a frown. And in the light, the answer right inside of coming down, and she said, "You can
Go away. I can leave here. I can be invisible. Go away."
Well, guys, that's the Ronnie James Dio special edition 4th episode of Matt's Metal Show. And I just want to tell you guys, go out there, listen to, some of the things that I've told you about. And there's a lot of things that you can go ahead and look for. You find old, like, Black Sabbath albums, like the live shows with Ronnie. And just, there's little hidden nuggets and bits and pieces here and there. But all the way back in the 50s when Ronnie was doing doo-wop up until the last, few months of his life when he gave us the final album, By Heaven and Hell. Ronnie James Dio had a rich and illustrious career, and he was definitely one of the founding members of heavy metal music, definitely one of the true greats. He was also a gentleman and a really outstanding guy to meet and to as far as from a fan base point of view, the guy was like stellar. And for those of us that I saw Ronnie play about like 5 or 6 times. Um, I'll always treasure those memories, and I'll always treasure the memories I had when I actually got to stand next to him and talk to him for about an hour at the NAMM show in 1990, I believe it was. Um, truly blessed to just have those memories. So, for all of you out there, this is Matt Lortz, Matt's Metal Show, Ronnie James Dio, everybody. It's been 5 years, 5 long years. Stay metal, everybody. Stay metal and listen to Dio.